right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Patriots First and Goal, the last official Patriots First and Goal of the 2024 season as we put this to bed. Super Bowl is in the books, the season is in the books, and it's quite a game, to say the least. I'm Alex Shane breaking down what technically was a game between the Chiefs and the Eagles, but it was more of an absolute slaughter, a beatdown of epic proportions that I did not see coming, and neither did you, Rich Hill. We both called the Chiefs to win this game. What happened, man? That was. I never could have predicted something like that.
Okay, Alec, real talk on this one. How much of what we talked about on our last podcast was just pure attempt at a reverse jinx? I'm going to be honest. I owe that to our listeners here. This is like those situations where you say something publicly but hope the other thing happens, because that way you win either way. You're either right or what you actually wanted to have happen takes place. Alec, I could not be happier, more thrilled that the Eagles won, especially in the fashion that they did. We can jump into it on this one, but I did not see it coming to this extent. This was just a non-competitive game.
Yeah, in 15 years, they're going to look back at the score and be like, oh, it wasn't a total blowout. But it was 40-0, basically, this game. The garbage time stats don't really matter. And I'm not saying it's garbage time in that they're stat padding. Mahomes gave it everything to the very end, which I appreciate. But 40-22 doesn't even remotely resemble the final score. As for me, I legitimately thought the Chiefs were going to win that game. I didn't think that, I wasn't trying to do a reverse jinx. I thought there was going to be some nonsense, not some referee nonsense, just some. The Chiefs kind of had that magic bug this year where they'd be like they'd miss a 10-yard field goal, a 7-yard field goal attempt would bounce off the post, or somebody would fumble it and they'd follow it back to them. These weird little things were happening to them, and they had that magical whatever it was. I guess they used up all their juju all season, because it's yikes.
Juju only had 2 catches for 16 yards.
Yeah, there you go. Just unbelievable. What a beatdown. I don't personally enjoy reveling in the misery of others, much to contrary to popular belief. I've only seen that compilation of Seahawks fans reacting to the Malcolm Butler pick once. I don't, because I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of an awful loss like this, and it sucks. But I will say this. I'm very happy to be putting the who's the GOAT debate on the back burner for a significant amount of time, because it was already insane that people were already crowning Mahomes the GOAT. Not Mahomes' fault. People were already talking about, with this three-peat, it makes him the GOAT. Not only did he avoid the three-peat, but he got absolutely destroyed. It was probably the worst game of his entire career. It wasn't just the whole team was bad. He was terrible. And there's no scenario where Tom Brady would ever get blown out like that in a Super Bowl. And watching people be like, well, he got blown out in that Ravens game in the wild card in 2009, coming off the ACL surgery when the entire team was bad. Well, yeah, that's true. But slight difference, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, totally. And you have to dig. It's one of those things where if you have to really, really think about well, when did he put up his biggest stinkers kind of a thing, or when did the team get blown out in the playoffs? You really have to look. Maybe the Jets game too. That was just a collapse of epic proportion on that one. Those are the two that you'd point to. 2009, 2010. Outside of that, that started off their streak of 2011 until infinity, when they made the AFC Championship game every single year, which the Chiefs have adopted. That's been their thing now. But once he made it to that final show, he delivered, right? I think you texted this, that Brady in all 10 of his Super Bowls gave the ball back to his defense with the lead in the fourth quarter. And he put his team in the position to win every single time. If they got into a hole, oftentimes because of him, against the Seahawks and the Falcons, they got into holes because of some plays that he made. He got them out of it. This was one where I don't know if the Chiefs were just maxed out. They just didn't seem interested at times, right? Obviously Mahomes turned it on in the fourth, but it was obviously too little too late. And I have to say that for the second and third quarters, I didn't think he had the fire. Like that's why when I look at, okay, maybe he was competing until the end. It felt more like stat padding because I didn't see that same effort and enthusiasm in the second and third quarter. And so that it only really happened once, that sense of urgency, once it was the fourth quarter and it was impossible to make the comeback.
It's interesting because we're on our kind of off-screen text thread, and when it was 24-0 at half,
Yeah.
then I texted the group, was like, the Chiefs are still going to win this game, aren't they? Yep. I legitimately thought they were. This is going to be Patrick Mahomes' 28-3 moment where they could, he could add that to his resume as the Brady Mahomes comparisons rage on. And so credit and respect to a team where there are very few teams where you're down 24-0 at halftime, and I legitimately thought they were going to come back and win somehow. But it really should be more about the Eagles because that was just an absolutely dominant performance. I think there was maybe one blitz styled up all game, if that. It was just four guys getting pressure all the time, and there were zero answers. There were zero adjustments. There was zero ability to do anything. And for whatever reason, they just could not. Did the Chiefs throw a single quick wide receiver screen? Did they throw any delay? I feel like there were just no plays that were called that I feel like honestly the Patriots would have called. I mean, if you look at I think probably the best comparison in this situation is the 2014 Seahawks, where they were just in the backfield immediately, and the Patriots adjusted. They figured out ways. It's just the Chiefs had no answers for an absolutely stifling Eagles defense and a massive grass affiliate there.
Yeah, totally. And I couldn't be happier for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Right. I talked a lot about being excited for Saquon Barkley, and I am very happy for him. And I am just a mush for all of those post-game audios that are released where you just see Jalen Hurts being the truest of leaders on the sideline, talking to the different players where, he and Saquon are talking to each other. And Saquon's like, hey, Jalen, you're going to finally smile now once the clock turns 0-0. And then Jalen just looks at him and goes, you are a missing piece. We were a team before this. We were a good team, but you were our missing piece. And I'm just like, Jalen, in this moment, you just have that ability to say the right thing. And I can't think of anyone who deserves it more based off of, not that he's had a really hard time, but from a career perspective, going back to college, what he's had to go through of being the best college quarterback at Alabama. He was a starter as a freshman, set records, a historically good quarterback, made it all the way to the national championship to Clemson and lost. Got to there and lost. The very next year, brought them back to the national championship, and they started to trail at halftime, and they benched him for someone named Tua, and that was it. That was the end of Jalen Hurts at Alabama. He brought them to 2 championship games and didn't get to finish the second one. And so he got to the cusp and never got there. Then next year, he stayed around. He said all the right things, said he was going to support Tua, did everything that you would expect a good team leader to do. He helped relieve when Tua got hurt in the SEC championship game, helped them win the SEC championship game, got them back to the college football playoffs as a result of it. But then it was Tua and they lost to Clemson again in the final. Transfers to Oklahoma, goes to wins the second in the Heisman to Joe Burrow. This close. Again, second place. Again. Goes to the draft behind Carson Wentz, eventually becomes the starter. Second year of a starter, 2022. NFL MVP, runner-up. Loses the Super Bowl. So close yet again. And this is just the story of his career. And so finally, this is almost a decade since his freshman year at Alabama. He's the guy. He's the one the team trusts. He gets them to the finals, gets them to the Super Bowl, and gets them over the top and is named MVP. I could not be happier for him.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It also kind of changes the entire landscape of the NFL. I mean, he was never in that discussion with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Even Joe Burrow, I'd throw in there. There's always these 4 AFC quarterbacks, and Jalen Hurts was never in that conversation. You got to put him in there now. It is now Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. So there's no reason you wouldn't, because Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen didn't do what he did. The only quarterback that beats that beat Mahomes in the playoffs with Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, and now it's Hurts as well. So I think it completely alters the landscape of the NFL. It gives the NFC maybe some credit and respect, for lack of a better term. It's funny, you think about, as I'm listening to all these morons talk about Joe Montana's now back in the conversation for some reason. It's weird, no, but Mahomes had already laughed Joe Montana 10 times, and he was coming for Brady. Now Montana is back, because I don't think Mahomes is above Montana now for a lot of people. But the NFC was so dominant in Montana's era. I feel like the AFC has kind of been the class of the NFL for a long time now. That conversation has now changed with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles are poised to run it back, I think, very easily. I mean, they have a formula. They have a dominant team. They've got young guys, a lot of good contracts. They're in really good shape. And it's funny, I really thought up until an exact moment, which we can talk about right now, I really thought the MVP of the game should have been Josh Sweat. He was an absolute behemoth. There was no way they were going to give it to a defensive lineman, because they don't give it to him. But literally, I just texted the group as well. I think Josh Sweat's the MVP here, but they'll give it to Jalen Hurts by default. And right as that happened, the Chiefs turned it over on downs, and probably the pass of the game, that 46-yarder to Monte Smith, that was just absolutely beautiful. And I was like, well, that was probably that moment, the bad pass from Mahomes that was well covered, immediately followed by first down, boom, 34-0 now. I was like, wow, this guy is here. And again, I obviously, as a Patriots fan, it makes my life easier having to not deal with the conversation anymore. But I live kind of in the Pennsylvania area. I'm in Eagles country. My wife's a diehard Cowboys fan, so hopefully she doesn't hear this podcast. But it just makes everyone around me better. And just I think it's a better storyline for the NFL as a whole.
Totally. Well, and I was talking about how good those audio clips are afterwards. After that specific touchdown, their offensive lineman, Jordan Mailata, went to Jalen Hurts afterwards, after he threw it, and they're like, they can't hang with you. They can't hang with you. They can't hang with you. And, Jalen Hurts is just dapping up everyone on the offense. And he hears Jordan saying that. They can't hang with you. And he just stares at him and goes, I know. And just walks off the field. And I'm just like, that is ice cold. That is so cool. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be to the MVP, or it was going to go to the quarterback who helps lead put up 41 points or 40 points. Sweat, 2.5 sacks on the day. Milton Williams, 2 sacks on the day. Eagles overall had 6 sacks without a single blitz. That's wild. The fact that they were able just to bottle up Mahomes so easily, it's not necessarily a recipe that everyone else can just copy and paste, because you have to have the talent to do it. And they have just such beasts at every single position on their defensive line. It should have been the defensive line getting MVP. Alternatively, I could see the blueprint. I know this isn't a new blueprint. We talk about this every single year. Just the offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line has been nasty for the past decade. I think that there should be a change to some of the NFL, the MVP voting, is that they should be allowed to vote for certain units. I think that would be a cool twist, because it's like, it's going to go to an MVP, or it's going to go to the quarterback, or it's going to go to an offensive skill player. It's going to go to wide receiver or running back. As a defensive player, if you're having your best game of your career as a cornerback, maybe you get a pick, but that also just means the other team's not going to test you. So you're not going to rack up anything. And look, there's not a world where I see a defensive player putting up, maybe a Luke Kuechly-esque 20 tackles, a sack, and an interception, and another pass defended. If it's a pick six, maybe. But Cooper DeJean had a pick six. That didn't help him on that one. And so I think that they should change the rules. If you're not an offensive skill player or quarterback, you should be able to vote for an entire unit.
I'd be all for that. I think it goes back to our earlier conversation about how Vinatieri got snubbed for the Super Bowl, or for the Hall of Fame, excuse me. Yes. There are certain positions that get valued higher than others by default, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. There have been plenty of games, there have been plenty of times when the quarterback won the MVP and he wasn't the best player on the field, but that's just kind of how it works. Maybe this will change that landscape as well. Maybe this was such a reality-altering game for so many people, in terms of how we perceive things, how we look at legacies, where we go from here, that there can be conversation to be had in the offseason. That's a good transition, Rich. It's a conversation I want to have with you about where teams go from here, including the Patriots. This is a Patriots podcast. First, I want to tell you about PrizePicks. Even though the NFL season is over, you can still use PrizePicks as the best place to get real money sports action, because basketball's still going, hockey's still going, and baseball is starting up soon. And all are available on PrizePicks. Over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. But you just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on PrizePicks. All-Star Weekend's almost here, and PrizePicks is the best place to win while watching your favorite players during that game. And Saturday night events like 3-point contests. Like I said, 1,000 times your cash. You can take some hot takes like Steph Curry for more than 5 3-pointers, maybe Giannis for more than 35 points. Whatever your hot takes are, cook them up with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to get that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So sign up today, download the app, and use code CLNS to get the $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Rich, I want to talk about kind of going forward here. This 2025 season is in the books. It is over. Would you say right now, I think it's probably fair to say the Eagles are most likely the early favorites to repeat in 2025. Obviously, a lot can happen between now and then. What do you think about the Chiefs? Where do the Chiefs go from here? They have some contracts coming up. Obviously, Super Bowl hangover is a real thing. Travis Kelce was a ghost in that game. They have some questions. They're still one of the elite teams in the AFC. But if you're a Chiefs kind of front office guy this morning, looking ahead to 25 season, what are you thinking overall?
Yeah, I'm looking at this like the 06 Patriots. You got to reinvent yourself, right? Like you were competitive. You know, 06 Patriots were a play away from reaching the Super Bowl and potentially beating the Bears. You know, that they would have beaten the Bears if that heads up. And does that make them good or set up? I don't think so. But this is the first time with Travis Kelce on the back, not even the back 9. He's on like the back 3 holes of his career. If he comes out and retires, I don't think anyone would blame him. I don't think he's had it this year. I don't think he's been interested or invested this year. I think he's gotten a taste of life outside of football, you know, with his acting and being on SNL and his life with Taylor, like all very legitimate reasons to be like, I've done everything I need to do here. Like if he retired, he deserves it. He's had a great career. And yes, they've kind of, in theory, moved on from Tyreek Hill, but it's been hard for them to replace him, right? That's been a consistent hole that they've been having to try and replace, is they don't have a consistent number 1 receiver as a result since they moved on from Tyreek. And Xavier Worthy had himself a day in the Super Bowl. Maybe he's the guy. But they are at that stage of, we've finished our first dynasty if Kelce retires. But like in the same way that when the Patriots, you know, they got wiped out by the Broncos, they tried Rashae Caldwell, it didn't work. They have to say, we got to reinvent ourselves. If we're going to stay on top, if we're going to repeat, everyone else is getting better. Yes, they had the best record. There was a lot of weird things that happened this year, not the officiating kind of thing, but just like they won a lot of coin flip games that they probably should not have won. Like things that they had like a 20% chance of winning. They just kept winning those things. In reality, their score differential, they were more like a 11-win team, not a 15-win team. And so where do they actually sit? Yes, home field advantage is massive. That's why the first round bye is impossible in the NFL. And so I think things will regress next year. They're going to be more like a 10 or 11-win team unless things change from a roster perspective. They're not going to get home field advantage. They might get bounced early in the playoffs. If they have to go on the road to Buffalo, if they have to go on the road to Baltimore, I could see them getting bounced because I think that those teams are fundamentally sounder teams. They had to play each other before they played the Chiefs. I don't think that's going to happen next year. And so if I'm Kansas City, I got to look at who's available out there. Obviously, I don't see the Bengals giving them T. Higgins kind of a thing, but for all the same questions that we're asking the Patriots right now of like, okay, how do you get your number 1 guy? The Chiefs are kind of asking them the same thing. Do they just try and repeat the strategy that they've had? It's kind of worked if they have the talent. Or Do they do what the Patriots do and say, all right, we're going to stop our short, like Deion Branch offense and bring in Randy Moss, or, we're going to pivot away from Wes Welker. We're going to bring in the 2 tight end sets. How are they going to reinvent themselves? That's absolutely where they are.
Do you think that, as of right now, would you bet on the Chiefs to win the AFC West?
I would. It's theirs until it's not. And I don't think it'll be the Raiders. Obviously, they are one of the worst spots in the league, but I do like Pete Carroll there. I think that the Chargers are one of those teams that I'll believe it when I see it. They're always close, and then it's always disappointing. The Broncos are one I'd watch out for. I think that Sean Payton had them overperforming this year. Maybe they'll regress next year. Bo Nix had himself a good rookie year. Is he going to keep doing that? Is he going to keep progressing? He very well could. I liked Bo Nix coming out of the draft. But I don't see any of those teams really asserting themselves to a degree. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers beat them, but I don't think that there's any team that I'd be like, oh no, they're heads and shoulders above where the Chiefs are.
Last question I'll ask, Rich, and I want to talk about the Patriots for a little bit before we close things out here and just kind of wrap up with the season. People are talking about this game, the Super Bowl, had a really negative impact on Patrick Mahomes' legacy. And look, at the end of the day, the way I see it is, if you're a star pupil and you ace every single test and the teacher loves you and you have 100 grade point average walking into the final exam and you get a 40 on that final exam, your grade point average is going to suffer a significant amount. That's a big hit for your grade point average. That's what happened to Mahomes this season. There's no way you can deny the bad way he played.
He slept through his final.
He 100% did. He got a 0 on his final exam. He had 100 going into it, and now he's got maybe like a C because the final counts for a lot more. Whether you like it or not, the final is the most important test you take all semester. However, he's 29 years old. He has plenty of time. And look, the Brady comparison, like, Brady will always have 18-1 on his resume. He couldn't close out the big game, and it would have mattered. He couldn't. That's a thing he has to live with. Luckily, he won like 4 more Super Bowls since then. He was able to kind of mask over that. But I think something you have to, if you're like a Mahomes guy, you have to just eat this one, take it on the chin, and hope that he uses it to fuel him, and he comes back stronger, and he wins another couple more, in which case he can get back on the horse a little bit. But you really you can't deny this was a legacy altering game for him.
Totally. And now it's the second one. He's had 2 Super Bowls where they've gotten they didn't just lose, they got blown out, right? Like, we could point to the Patriots underperforming in that 18-1 game against the Giants. Like, they put up 14 points. That's the cornerstones. And we're like, Brady laughed at the idea of only putting up that many points. And that's part of it. Fortunately, they had their defense that kept them around, but Brady also did give them the lead at the end. And it took a impossible Tyree catch, which is regarded as one of the most notable plays in NFL history because of the stakes of what it was. And that's what happens when Brady lost, is that this was monumental. And it was monumental then because it was an 18-0 team. And it wasn't like we have to wait 10 years to figure out the magnitude of import of this loss. This was a whoa, this loss is historic. And I don't think anyone feels that way about these Mahomes losses, right? To me, that is indicative of lower expectations. And that is indicative of someone who had a lower expectation to perform. And I think that alone puts him in the tier below, which is, again, he's a top 4 quarterback in NFL history. But I think it changes the pace of his trajectory, where if he won this one, he would be like, okay, you finish out your career with your accolades, you're ahead of Joe Montana and Peyton Manning. Right now, he's still back in pace with them. He is in the top 4, and he's with Joe Montana and Peyton Manning. And it's part of what you said. You lose in the final, you lose in the Super Bowl, it means more. It's weighted more. Is it, fair to penalize someone for making the Super Bowl? Because Peyton Manning played like garbage in 2015 and they won the Super Bowl. Does he get credit for that? And I don't think he does. It's helpful for him to be like, well, he's a multi-time Super Bowl winner, but I don't think anyone looks at his legacy and goes, that Super Bowl is what makes him a top 3 quarterback of all time. It's everything that happened outside of it. And I think when you're still in the stage of establishing who are you within the lexicon of the entire NFL history, this loss matters for Mahomes. but it also is representative of this is starting a new chapter. This is they have to figure out what their identity is going to be. He still has a long career ahead of him. I don't think he's going to play into his 40s like Brady did, just based off of his play style. We see Aaron Rodgers, the wheels fell off a couple of years ago. That's probably more similar to what will happen to Mahomes. So maybe he has 7 more years of top-level play, but that means he's going to have to win 4 out of the next 7 in order to match Brady, and I don't think that's possible.
Probably not. You never know. But again, I think your point about his style of play just doesn't conducive to a long career. And it just shows you pocket passers will always win out at the end of the day. Maybe Tom Brady, as long as Tom Brady's in the building, Mahomes will never win one.
Yeah.
All right, this is the podcast. We got to run out of time here. We got to talk about the Patriots a little bit. The offseason started, obviously not officially, but free agency is not that far away. The combine's coming up. What do you want to see the Patriots prioritizing? And have your draft choices, your free agency, sexy signings, have they changed at all looking at this Eagles Chiefs game, watching how dominant the defensive line was, for example? Is D-line now higher on your list of priorities for receiver, or you still kind of feeling the same course you had before?
Yeah, I feel the same as before. Like, it's great that they have who they have on their team, right? The Eagles have invested, top 15 picks in both of their interior defensive tackles. They brought in Josh Sweat, which was a nice free agent signing. Like they have good players there, but like, I don't think they necessarily have to draft them early, right? Nolan Williams was a 3rd round pick. And I think, hopefully Christian Barmore can return. They have pieces there. I think when I look at the Eagles and be like, what got them over the top? It's the offensive line. And is that a pick that I think you need to invest your first, your top pick on, your 1st round pick on to like, it's a top 5 pick? No. But what I would say is that is the blueprint that you can get wide receivers, right? Like, I think that they have some good pieces in the wide receiver room. I think they obviously need to get a true number 1. Is Travis Hunter that? Is Tex McMillan that? I don't know if Tex that guy. Like, he has the size. Is he going to be a Drake London? Like, there's players that are good, but I don't know if they're going to be it. So if I were the Patriots, I think that the emphasis should just be on trading down. Hopefully one of the top quarterbacks is up on the board still. I could see one of the teams going for Travis Hunter just because of his ability. And then, one of the quarterbacks slips to them at 4 and a team will want to trade up and get them. And if that's the case, trade down, pick up the offensive line. I think, and like get another pick, because there's so much help that this team needs on that offensive line. And that's the blueprint, right? And this is what the Chiefs did. This is what the Eagles did. You need to have a good offensive line if you want to be competitive. And the Patriots offensive line has been garbage for the past half decade. It's been nearly unplayable, truly worst in the league this past year. And so I would love for them to get a true number 1 receiver. I think that's putting the cart before the horse, and they need to just fix the offensive line first.
Do you consider T. Higgins a true number 1 receiver?
I do. I thought he was coming out of the draft, and I think he's been playing a solid 1B role, and I think that can be good enough. Like, I would love for them to get an A.J. Brown type. He was one of those players that was coming out of the draft, and we looked at it and we're like, he's an SEC player who has set records, and Bill Belichick didn't want him. It's one of those, like, obviously he was a great pick. Why didn't you go for it? And so you can get those players in the 2nd round. I think they can get those top players. And hopefully Jalen Polk can figure out something with a new offensive coaching staff, because so much of player development is on the coaches, and they were just really bad at their jobs last year.
Yeah, I'm just glad that it would really suck if the NFL decided to flip-flop the draft and free agency, and you had to draft players before you sign guys from their team. So I'm glad it goes the other way around. Because I think we have a lot of off-season draft and free agency previews to do, so I'm not going to get too deep into it here, but I think a lot of how they draft will be dictated on what they're able to do in free agency. Drake May's been out there campaigning pretty hard, which is nice. I'm hoping the players who are becoming available will see some potential in New England or want to be part of a rebuild. Because, like we've saying all along, there's no Tom Brady, no Bill Belichick, so it's not like it's easy to get guys to sign here anymore. Yeah. I'm glad it's not my problem. I get to watch it.
Totally. Well, That's all I have. We'll break it down a little bit more later this month. We have the combine, then the new NFL league starts in March. But Alec, do you have any final thoughts on the 2024-25 NFL season?
You know, man, it's funny. Based on the past couple seasons you and I have had to slog through, grand picture, all things, this one was pretty good. This one ended okay. The Patriots got a quarterback. There were some flashes. The Chiefs got stomped. The Brady debate is over.
It was a good year.
Yeah, only one team ends up happy every single year. The rest of us all have to just deal with not winning Super Bowl. So congratulations to the Eagles again. And if you're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, you have a top 5 draft pick, ton of cap space. Mahomes got destroyed. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with how it shook out. And I'm looking forward to kind of taking some time off and relaxing a little bit and watching some basketball instead.
Totally. Well, it was truly the haters' ball to end the season. I was happy to participate as one of those haters. Alec, I'm hoping that we can root for some more things that are positive this upcoming year. But until next time, Alec, you have a good one.
You too, buddy. See ya.